Be me, working at a regional insurance office in downtown. Name's Abigail, 28 years old, claims adjuster for auto accidents. Another day at the office, sitting in break room during lunch, eating my quinoa salad while scrolling through news articles on my phone. Co-worker Jessica walks in, starts microwaving leftover pizza. "Did you see that article about dating apps making people more lonely?" she asks. Immediately roll my eyes so hard I practically see my own brain. "Jessica, that's just another way society tries to blame women for refusing to settle for toxic masculinity." She looks confused, just wanted to make small talk. I guess I just think about what? That women should just accept whatever scraps men throw at them? Jessica tries to backtrack. "No, I just meant maybe technology." "Technology isn't the problem, Jessica. The problem is that men haven't evolved past their caveman mentality. They expect us to be grateful for the bare minimum while they contribute nothing meaningful to relationships." Jessica nods uncomfortably, clearly regretting bringing it up. But I'm just getting started because this is important education. Women today are finally waking up to the fact that we don't need male validation to feel complete. We're choosing ourselves over settling for emotionally unavailable partners who can't even do their own laundry. Jessica mumbles something about her boyfriend being pretty helpful. "That's internalized misogyny talking, Jessica. You've been conditioned to praise men for doing basic human tasks." She looks genuinely hurt now, but I continue because truth isn't always comfortable. Previous generations of women didn't have choices. They stayed in marriages out of economic necessity, not happiness. We're the first generation that gets to prioritize our own fulfillment over societal expectations. Jessica quietly finishes heating her food and sits at the far end of the table. Feels satisfied that I've helped open her mind to some difficult truths. Eric from accounting walks in, overhears the tail end of conversation. He's this quiet guy, probably early 30s, always polite but keeps to himself. "Sorry, didn't mean to interrupt," he says, heading to coffee machine. "No interruption, Eric. Jessica and I were just discussing how modern women are finally breaking free from patriarchal relationship structures." He pauses, turns around with that look men get when they're about to mansplain something. "That's interesting. I actually just read some research about modern relationships. Here we go, another man with opinions about women's experiences. Let me guess, you're going to tell us we're too picky and should lower our standards?" Eric looks genuinely surprised by my response. "No. Actually, the research was about loneliness patterns across different generations." "Oh, please, Eric. Let me guess, some study funded by conservative think tanks trying to scare women back into submission?" "Actually, it was longitudinal research from several universities, including some pretty progressive ones." Jessica perks up slightly, sensing tension. "I really don't need a man to interpret data about women's experiences for me, Eric." "That's fair, but the data itself is pretty objective. Numbers don't really have gender bias." Laugh condescendingly, because that's exactly what someone with privilege would say. "Everything has bias, Eric. The way questions are asked, the demographics studied, the interpretation of results." "You're probably right about bias in general, but this was pretty comprehensive." He pulls out his phone, starts scrolling through something. They tracked social connections, relationship satisfaction, reported happiness levels across birth cohorts. And let me guess, they found that women were happier when they were barefoot and pregnant? Actually, no. They found that women born between 1990 and 2000 report significantly higher rates of loneliness. Pause for a moment, because that's oddly specific. That's correlation, not causation. Women today are just more honest about their feelings. Maybe, but they also found measurable decreases in social connections, romantic relationship satisfaction, even close friendships. Because we have higher standards now, Eric, we're not willing to accept toxic relationships. Jessica is watching this exchange like a tennis match. The research is actually controlled for relationship quality metrics, even accounting for abuse, financial dependence, and other negative factors from previous eras. Starting to feel annoyed that he's so prepared for this argument. "What's your point, Eric? That women should go back to being dependent on men?" "No point really. Just thought the data was interesting." He's scrolling through more stuff on his phone now. They compared reported life satisfaction across generations. Women born in the 70s and 80s, even accounting for fewer opportunities, reported higher levels of social connection. That's because they were brainwashed into thinking they needed male approval to be happy. Could be, but the research also tracked objective measures: frequency of social interactions, size of social networks. Women today might have more Instagram followers, but fewer close friends they can call in a crisis. Jessica nods slightly, like this resonates with her somehow. Social media creates fake connections, Eric. Previous generations had to rely on shallow, proximity-based relationships. True, but they also found differences in romantic relationship outcomes. Now he's pulling up what looks like actual charts on his phone. Women in our age cohort are significantly more likely to be single, and among those who do date, satisfaction rates are lower, because we refuse to settle for less than we deserve. Voice is getting sharper now, because he's clearly trying to manipulate data to make some point. The study actually tracked what people said they deserved versus what they reported as making them happy. Interesting gap between expectations and actual satisfaction. Are you seriously suggesting women should lower their expectations? Not at all. Just sharing what the research found. Eric turns his phone toward me and Jessica. Look, they broke it down by specific metrics. The screen shows some kind of official-looking chart with university logos. Reported loneliness levels among women aged 24 to 34 in 2023 versus same-age cohorts in previous decades. The numbers are surprisingly high for our generation. This is biased methodology, Eric. Previous generations wouldn't even admit to being lonely. They controlled for reporting bias, used both self-reports and behavioral measures, like frequency of social contact, participation in community activities, length and stability of relationships. Swipe to see more of his screen, and there are multiple charts. Social Isolation Index for millennial women shows statistically significant increases across all education and income levels. Jessica leans over to look too, her expression changing. But this is from Princeton, Stanford, couple others, she says quietly. That doesn't matter, Jessica. Academic institutions can still perpetuate harmful narratives. Look at this one, Eric continues, swiping to another chart. Romantic relationship satisfaction scores across birth cohorts. The graph shows a clear downward trend for women born after 1990. Even controlling for relationship equality, shared household responsibilities, financial independence. Women born between 1990 and 2000 report lower relationship satisfaction than any previous generation going back to 1950. Stare at the screen, trying to find flaws in what I'm seeing. This has to be flawed. Women today are in more equal partnerships. That's what makes it interesting. The research shows relationships are objectively more equal now. But subjective satisfaction has decreased despite objective improvements. Jessica points to something on the screen. What's this part about historical comparison? Eric scrolls to show another section. They compared with historical data going back about 150 years. Women born 1990 to 2000 report the highest levels of loneliness in all of recorded history, even compared to women during wars, economic depressions, periods with fewer legal rights. Feel heat rising in my chest because this is clearly designed to attack women's progress. That's impossible, Eric. Women in previous eras had no autonomy, no choices. True, but the research suggests that social connections and community support systems were stronger. Extended families, religious communities, neighborhood networks. Women might have had fewer individual freedoms, but more social integration. Jessica is nodding. Along now, which is infuriating. So you're both saying women should give up our independence for fake community connections? Nobody said that, Abigail, Jessica says gently. I'm just looking at what the data shows, Eric adds. Swipe through more of the charts myself, trying to find the obvious flaws. Frequency of deep, meaningful friendships among millennial women versus previous generations. The numbers are devastatingly low for our cohort. Average size of social support network, people you could call in an emergency. Again, our generation shows significant decreases. Reported feelings of romantic fulfillment in long-term relationships. The trend line is unmistakable. Downward trajectory, starting with women born in late 1980s. This can't be right, say, voice getting louder. These numbers don't account for the fact that we're not willing to accept toxic relationships. Actually, look at this section, Eric says, scrolling down. They separated data between women who deliberately choose to be single versus those who want relationships but can't find suitable partners. The loneliness rates are highest among women who want romantic connection but feel unable to find it. Jessica winces, reading over my shoulder. Women who actively choose single life actually report much higher satisfaction. But that's only about 23% of chronically single women in our age group. The majority want romantic connection, but feel frustrated by available options. Stare at the screen, feeling something uncomfortable in my stomach. This is manipulated data designed to shame women back into accepting less. Voice is getting shaky now, which is embarrassing. I don't think anyone's trying to shame anyone, Eric says calmly. The researchers were mostly women, actually, just tracking social trends. Scroll to see the research team, and it is indeed mostly women researchers. Then they've been brainwashed by patriarchal academic structures. Jessica gives me a concerned look. Abigail, are you okay? I'm fine, Jessica. I'm just frustrated that we're supposed to accept this propaganda. But my hands are trembling, holding Eric's phone. Look at this comparison, Eric says, taking the phone back and scrolling. Life satisfaction surveys from women in 1970s versus today. Even accounting for workplace discrimination, limited career options, financial dependence. Women in the 70s reported higher overall life satisfaction and lower loneliness. That's because they didn't know any better. Voice comes out louder than intended. Other people in break room turn to look. They accepted their oppression because they didn't have alternatives. Maybe, Eric says quietly, but the research suggests they had stronger social bonds. More community integration, extended family support, neighborhood connections. Jessica nods. My mom talks about how different things were. Everyone knew their neighbors. That's nostalgia, Jessica, romanticizing the past. But even as I say it, can feel cracks forming in my certainty. Here's the section about historical context, Eric continues. They compared our generation with women during World War II, the Great Depression. Even women facing genuine hardship and limited rights reported less chronic loneliness. Because they had no choice but to rely on each other. Voice is getting higher, more strained. We don't need forced community bonds based on oppression. Eric shows another chart. Social support network size across different eras. Average number of people a woman could rely on for emotional support. The numbers for our generation are frighteningly low. Women in 1950 averaged 8 to 12 close social connections. Women today average 3 to 4, and many report having no one they can truly confide in. Jessica's face falls. That actually sounds about right for me. Jessica, don't let this manipulative data make you doubt your choices. But my voice sounds desperate even to me. I'm just saying, I do feel like I don't have that many people I could really call if something happened. That's because we've been told we need to be independent and self-reliant. Practically shouting now, and everyone in break room is staring. We don't need to depend on other people for our emotional needs. Eric looks uncomfortable with how heated I'm getting. I think the research just suggests that humans are social creatures. Regardless of gender politics, isolation affects mental health. Don't patronize me, Eric. Slam my hand on the table, making Jessica jump. I know what this is really about. You can't handle that women don't need men anymore. Abigail, please calm down, Jessica says softly. So you found some biased research to try to convince us we're miserable without traditional relationships. Eric holds up his hands. I really wasn't trying to make any point about relationships. Just thought the data about social connections was interesting. Grab his phone again, scrolling frantically through the charts. Looking for something, anything that disproves what I'm seeing. But every metric tells the same story. Loneliness rates, social isolation, romantic dissatisfaction. All higher for women born between 1990 and 2000 than any other generation. This can't be right, mutter, voice breaking slightly. Women today are more educated, more financially independent, more empowered. We have more choices than ever before. Jessica touches my arm gently. Maybe having more choices makes things harder? No, snap at her, jerking away. Choice is good. Independence is good. We're not supposed to be miserable. Other people in break room are definitely watching now, some whispering. Scroll to a section about mental health outcomes. Anxiety and depression rates among millennial women, significantly higher than previous generations, even accounting for better diagnosis and reporting. This is all correlation, say, voice getting shrill. There are other factors, economic instability, climate change, social media. The research controlled for socioeconomic factors, Eric says gently, and they found similar patterns across different countries with varying economic conditions. Find another chart comparing urban versus rural women. Rural women in our generation report slightly better outcomes, but still worse than previous generations. See, it's about social media and technology, not feminism. But even as I say it, can see the data doesn't support that conclusion. Rural women use social media too, but maintain more traditional community structures. Jessica is reading over my shoulder again. Look at this part about career satisfaction versus life satisfaction. The data shows women today are more satisfied with career achievements. But overall, life satisfaction has decreased. Career fulfillment used to correlate positively with life satisfaction. For our generation, the correlation has weakened significantly. Feel tears starting to form, which is humiliating. This is designed to make us doubt ourselves, to convince us that feminism has failed. Eric shakes his head. I don't think that's what it's saying. Just that maybe some traditional social structures had benefits we didn't anticipate losing. What traditional structures? Voice is getting loud again. Forced marriage? Economic dependence? No career options? Maybe just the community aspects, Jessica suggests quietly. Extended family involvement, neighborhood connections, shared child rearing. We can have community without oppression. But even as I say it, realize I can't name many close friends I have. Most of my social interaction happens at work or through dating apps. Scroll to a section about friendship patterns. Average frequency of in-person social contact with friends. Millennial women spend significantly less time with friends than previous generations, even accounting for longer work hours and career demands. We prioritize romantic relationships and career over friendships. Previous generations maintained broader social networks throughout life. Jessica nods sadly. When's the last time we hung out outside of work? Realize I can't remember the last time I spent time with friends just for fun. Most of my social energy goes toward dating apps and work networking. That's because we're focused on building meaningful careers instead of gossiping over coffee. But my voice lacks conviction now. Find another devastating chart about romantic relationship patterns. Length and stability of romantic relationships across generations. Women born 1990 to 2000 have shorter relationships, more breakups, less relationship satisfaction, even among couples who describe their relationships as equal and healthy. We're just not willing to settle for mediocrity anymore. Voice cracks on the last word. Eric and Jessica exchange concerned glances. Maybe the bar has been set so high that nothing feels good enough, Jessica suggests. That's victim blaming, Jessica. But scrolling through more data about relationship expectations versus satisfaction. Women today report much higher expectations for romantic partners, but lower satisfaction even when those expectations are met. Previous generations had lower expectations but higher contentment in relationships. Hands are shaking holding the phone now. Everything I've believed about women's progress is being challenged by actual data, not opinions or anecdotes, but statistical evidence from multiple reputable sources. This doesn't account for the fact that previous generations couldn't leave bad relationships. Voice is getting desperate. They stayed in marriages because they had no choice. The research separated data between women who stayed in self-described happy versus unhappy marriages. Even women in happy marriages in previous generations reported higher satisfaction than women in happy relationships today. Jessica is looking at me with genuine concern now. Abigail, you're really pale. Maybe you should sit down. But I can't stop scrolling through the data. Every chart tells the same story. Loneliness, isolation, dissatisfaction, anxiety. All higher among women my age than any previous generation in recorded history, even compared to women during the Irish potato famine. Women during wartime when their husbands were overseas. Women during economic depressions. All reported lower rates of chronic loneliness than women born 1990 to 2000. Feel like the room is spinning. Everything I've built my identity around is being challenged. The idea that women today are happier, more fulfilled, more empowered. This has to be wrong, whisper, voice barely audible. There has to be a methodological flaw. Eric gently takes his phone back. Maybe it's not about right or wrong. Maybe it's just complicated. Perhaps some aspects of traditional life had benefits while others were harmful. And maybe we lost some good things when we gained others. No, voice comes out as a shout. We can't go backwards. Women's rights matter. Everyone in break room is definitely staring now. Can feel tears streaming down my face. Gender equality is important. We can't just accept that women were happier when oppressed. Jessica tries to put an arm around me, but I shrug her off. This data is trying to convince us that feminism made women miserable. I don't think that's what it's saying, Eric says carefully. Maybe it's saying that dismantling oppressive structures also meant losing some beneficial social connections. And maybe we need to figure out how to build community and connection in new ways. but I can barely hear him over the sound of my worldview crumbling. Scroll through the phone one more time. Looking at chart after chart of women my age reporting record levels of loneliness, higher than women who lived through wars, famines, economic collapse, higher than women who couldn't vote, couldn't work, couldn't choose their husbands. I don't understand how this is possible. Voice is small and broken now. How can we be lonelier than women who had no rights? Jessica sits down next to me. Maybe having rights isn't the same thing as having community. Maybe individual freedom doesn't automatically create happiness. Feel completely overwhelmed by the implications. If the data is right, then everything I've believed about women's progress is incomplete. We gained legal equality and economic independence, but somehow lost social connection and community support. I need to go home, say, standing up abruptly, chair scrapes loudly against floor. Are you okay to drive? Jessica asks. I'm fine, lie, grabbing my purse, but hands are still trembling. Walk quickly toward the exit, aware that everyone is watching. Can hear Jessica and Eric having a quiet conversation behind me, probably about how I lost it over some research data. But the data keeps replaying in my mind. Women born 1990 to 2000 are the loneliest in all of recorded human history. Despite having more opportunities, more choices, more freedom than ever, somehow we ended up more isolated than women who lived under actual oppression. Drive home in a daze, questions swirling. Pull into my apartment complex and sit in the car. Look around at all the individual units, people living alone. Realize I don't know any of my neighbors' names. When's the last time I had a conversation with someone just because we were in proximity? Most of my social interactions are planned, scheduled, optimized. Work colleagues, dating app matches, professional networking. Very little spontaneous human connection. Think about my grandmother's stories of neighborhood potlucks, borrowing cups of sugar. Used to think that sounded suffocating, like forced socialization. But maybe there was something valuable about being embedded in a community, even if that community had problematic power structures. Walk up to my apartment, passing several neighbors without making eye contact, everyone looking at phones, avoiding interaction. Unlock my door and step into my carefully curated space. Everything exactly how I want it, no one else's preferences to consider. This is supposed to be empowerment. But suddenly it feels hollow. Sit on my couch and think about the data Eric showed me. Women my age having fewer close friends, shorter relationships, less community support, higher anxiety, more depression, record levels of loneliness, despite having more freedom and opportunities than any previous generation. What did we lose when we gained independence? Grab my phone and scroll through contacts, looking for someone I could call if I had a real emergency. The list is shorter than I expected, mostly work contacts, casual, acquaintances, dating app connections. Very few people I could truly rely on. Certainly fewer than the 8 to 12 close connections women in 1950 reportedly had. Think about my dating history. Endless cycle of matching, messaging, first dates, disappointment, constantly feeling like everyone could be replaced by someone better, never fully investing because there are always more options. Is this really better than arranged marriages or limited choice? At least women in previous generations knew where they stood. They built deep connections with the people in their actual lives, instead of always wondering if someone better was just a swipe away. Feel tears starting again, which is embarrassing even alone in my apartment. This isn't how it's supposed to be. Feminism was supposed to make women happier, more fulfilled, not lonelier and more anxious than women living under patriarchal oppression. But the data doesn't lie. Women born between 1990 and 2000 are measurably less satisfied with life, despite having measurably more opportunities. What does that say about everything I've believed about progress? Curl up on my couch, feeling smaller than I have in years. Maybe Eric was right that it's complicated. Maybe we gained important freedoms but lost important connections. Maybe individual empowerment isn't the same thing as human flourishing. But admitting that feels like betraying everything I've fought for. If traditional social structures provided better mental health outcomes, does that mean feminism was wrong? Or does it mean we need to find new ways to build community and connection? Ways that preserve individual freedom while creating social bonds? Phone buzzes with text from Jessica. Hey, just checking if you're okay. That data was pretty intense. Stare at the message for a long time before responding. Yeah, just processing some things. Want to talk about it? Could grab coffee after work tomorrow? Realize this might be exactly what the research was talking about. Building genuine friendships, not just work acquaintanceships. That sounds good. Thanks for checking on me. Of course. See you tomorrow. Put phone down and think about Jessica's offer. When's the last time someone reached out just to see how I was doing? Most of my social interactions are transactional or romantic. Very little pure friendship and care. Maybe that's part of what the data was capturing. The loss of simple human connection in favor of optimized, purposeful relationships. Everything has to serve a function. Career advancement, romantic prospects, personal growth. But maybe humans need some non-functional social bonding too, just being around people who care about us, without needing anything in return. Think about calling my mom, but that feels too vulnerable right now. She'd probably say something about how women today expect too much, which would just make me defensive again. But maybe she'd have a point. Maybe expectations and reality have become disconnected. Maybe pursuing individual fulfillment as the highest good left us isolated, while previous generations prioritized community bonds even when individually limiting. Wonder what would happen if women today tried to build traditional community structures, neighborhood relationships, extended family involvement, shared child rearing, without the oppressive elements like economic dependence and limited career options. Is it possible to have both individual freedom and social integration? Or are they fundamentally in tension? Feel exhausted by all these questions. Everything I thought I understood about women's progress feels uncertain now. The data showed we're lonelier and less satisfied than women who lived under actual patriarchy. How is that possible? What did they have that we lost? And how can we get it back without giving up our hard-won freedoms? Maybe tomorrow's coffee with Jessica is a start. Building one genuine friendship instead of just having work colleagues. Maybe that's how we solve this. One relationship at a time. Creating community within the context of individual choice. But it means admitting that feminist ideology alone isn't sufficient for human happiness. That we need other people in ways that pure independence can't fulfill. And that's a harder truth than I was prepared to face today, especially after losing it so completely in front of everyone. But maybe Eric was just presenting data, not attacking my beliefs. Maybe I got defensive because the information challenged my worldview, instead of considering that it might be highlighting genuine problems that deserve thoughtful solutions rather than ideological dismissal. Tomorrow, I'll apologize to Eric and Jessica, and maybe start building the kind of connections the research suggests we're missing, even if it means admitting that my generation got some things wrong about the relationship between individual freedom and human flourishing.